And showtime! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup. Look at news, trends, and tips for the SMB channel in 5 minutes or thereabouts. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rich Freeman, executive editor of the ChannelPro Network. I'm joined this week, as I am every week, by your other co-host, Eric Simpson, a business transformation and improvement advisor to MSPs and other IT providers. Eric, how goes it?
It goes great, Rich. And it seems like it's been less than 24 hours since you and I were live at another event this week together.
Indeed. Well, live at another event via Zoom, right? Yeah, it's been just hours since we did that. Eric was one of the speakers at our Business Management Online Summit event, which took place a day ago as we record this right now. He was in this terrific session on dealing with sales objections with Gil Cargill, another sales expert. Great stuff. So yeah, thanks for that, Eric. I was really happy with that session and the whole show, actually.
Yeah, the overall event. I mean, you guys keep improving, the quality and the value of each one of these, and it just keeps getting better and better. And before we started recording today, I commented on how great the platform is that you're using. And I do a lot of these live virtual events, and you guys are really fine tuning this thing. It's really great to participate in, and it's such a value to the attendees.
Thank you very much. Just for the benefit of the audience, I did not pay him to say that, but I'm very grateful that you feel that way, and thank you for being you. You've been a speaker at a number of our events, in person, online, through the years, and we love having you. Let's dive into our top story this week, though, and it comes to us from Microsoft. It's kind of a sign of the times sort of story. Microsoft has hosted its Ignite event, one of their big conferences this week. They would normally do that in person. They were online like everybody else still as well. And this is the kind of event where, what they would really like to be doing is talking about big new technologies and innovations and so on. And they certainly had a lot to say about that, and in particular in the realm of augmented reality and so on. But there was also a ton of security news that came out of the conference, and that's pretty much inevitable. If you are one of the Microsofts of the world and you're making product announcements, it's going to be about security. And we'll see why that is in just a minute. And like I said, there's a lot of it. I'll just run through a few quick highlights to give you a sense for some of what they were talking about. They put passwordless authentication in Azure Active Directory. They made that generally available, through technologies like Windows Hello and so on and so forth. Get people out of the business of memorizing and recording passwords. That generally is a more secure way to authenticate people and more convenient as well. They introduced Azure Active Directory conditional access, and I'm seeing more and more of these conditional access features come into security products where you don't necessarily need to impose the same degree of controls. You don't have to be as strict with a particular user if you know that they're logging in from the office, for example, versus from their home or an airport or something like that. They introduced something, or starting this month, coming very soon, they have something called Azure AD External Identities. Everybody is collaborating and connecting with customers and business partners these days online. There was some technology in Azure AD to enable that to a certain degree. They've expanded and improved, enhanced that technology, and created something called external identities. They have expanded their endpoint data loss prevention service, which was available for Windows 10 and Microsoft Edge, the Microsoft Edge browser before. Now it's on Chrome. It applies to on-prem file shares and SharePoint. They integrated their Azure Sentinel, their SIM solution with Microsoft 365 Defender, a whole bunch of security news. Again, the bigger story there is that security remains one of the biggest, most persistent, most damaging issues in the IT industry today. The big vendors out there, are thankfully aware of that and investing in it. Microsoft, which you go back a decade or maybe a little bit more than that, they had a very poor reputation on security. They actually have a very strong reputation on security today because they've been taking it more seriously. And yet, despite that, what was the other Microsoft security related news this week, Eric? It was the vulnerability found in Microsoft Exchange Server, we believe exploited by Chinese hackers, that has allowed attackers to compromise some number of Exchange Server implementations. And Microsoft had suggested that it was a relatively targeted and limited set of customers that were exploited by that. I would encourage anyone watching this right now to go to the Huntress blog. Huntress is a security vendor. If you find their blog, they've been updating on a regular basis a post about this Exchange Server issue, in which they said, just based on data they've collected from their customers, it looks like a more widespread, more widely exploited issue than Microsoft may have been indicating. Now, again, Microsoft is not the only vendor by far that has been victimized by these kinds of issues in the recent past. We've been talking a lot about SolarWinds, for example, but just, further reflection, how dangerous the landscape is out there, how important it is for vendors like Microsoft to be serious about security, and how much we can continue to expect conferences like Ignite to be, I won't say dominated, but to have a lot of security news involved, because it's got to be the top of mind thing for the big vendors and their partners and their customers.
Well, Rich, you would expect Microsoft to be leading the charge in these areas, right? I mean, there aren't, and you mentioned, Microsoft was involved in, news this week with the Exchange, breach or attack and whatnot, but they were also involved in the SolarWinds breach. They were in there as well. So Microsoft has such a pervasive presence in society, in business and home and education and all that. I mean, I'm surprised sometimes, that they're not involved a little bit more, which is, like you said, a testament to them. They have really turned things around and are now, seen as redeeming their rather poor, perspective maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago about, their security focus. And they've done really good work to improve on that. But yeah, I would imagine that, you know, in order to give this topic the attention that it deserves from Microsoft, I would see them maybe accelerating even more security focused type of events as we move forward, and security type of resources. And I know they have. I just don't know, in their distribution of live events like Ignite. I mean, how much they're looking to just focus on an event focused specifically around security, and maybe include vendors at a high level and have those. And I know they work on those relationships. I just maybe I'm not hearing about them as much as we're hearing about the bad stuff that's going on, right? Because you always hear the bad stuff, the breaches and all that, but very seldom do we hear about all the good that they're doing. So this is great news coming from Ignite this week.
So, the great news there, Microsoft is training more attention on security. Your tip of the week, Eric, has to do with something else that you want the folks in our audience to be training more attention to. And surprisingly enough, that topic is profit.
Absolutely, Rich. And the tip of the week is focus on profit instead of revenue. And you think that that's kind of an expected perspective. You think, yeah, no, duh, we should be focusing more on profit than revenue. But I've been involved in several engagements recently, and one was kind of an M&A opportunity. I was helping a client through, doing some valuation and evaluating a potential purchase, and they were just looking at the revenue that it's going to add to the combined company after the acquisition. But then when we started parsing through profitability and things like that, it became apparent very, very quickly that it would take years longer than what a typical exciting M&A opportunity should yield, in terms of, just breaking even from the initial investment and whatever else is needed to integrate and all that over some period of time. So, it took some analysis, but at the end of the day, profit beats revenue. I'd rather, have $100,000 worth of profit at the end of the year instead of zero profit, but 5 million in top line revenue, if that makes sense, right? I'm being very simplistic, but I work with a lot of partners, as you know, Rich, helping them develop their bundles and pricing methodologies and all of that. And it starts with what is our target profit margin that we want to achieve as we are putting together these proposals and bundling and pricing our standard agreements. If and because if we're not doing that, then we have a tendency to negotiate on price more easily when the client gives us that objection that it's not in the budget, and we haven't done our job during the sales process to avoid that objection at the end. So profit, profit, profit over revenue. Not that top line revenue isn't important and cash flow isn't important, but at the end of the day, the valuation of your organization is going to be heavily predicated on a multiple of your EBITDA at the end of the day. So that's profit.
And I would think last year, I would think 2020 really sort of underscored, what you're talking about here and the importance of that, because everybody took a revenue hit last year. But the companies, at least some of the companies that were able to control costs, continued to be profitable. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, if you have $1 left over after you've spent everything you have to spend, you are profitable and you are a viable business. You can weather even a severe downturn like the one that we went through earlier on there. And that, if nothing else, that is why you really need to be training a lot of attention at profit. It's profit that's going to keep you in business, even if you can't grow profit because of larger economic headwinds. If you are losing money, it's going to be hard to keep the doors open. If you are profitable, you can kind of get through whatever you've got to get through, and that's partly a function of revenue, but not entirely. You really got to be focused on the bottom line less than the top line.
Right. I mean, cut costs and increase efficiencies. I mean, how do you increase the profit of a long-term managed service agreement, that's 3 years in the making? Well, you continue to become better at delivering that service, more efficient, leveraging automation, and cutting costs as much as you can over time. So, there's a few different ways to skin a cat, but at the end of the day, increasing profitability is all about, delivering profitable services to begin with, and then increasing those profits over time by becoming more efficient and controlling your costs.
All right. Well, that leaves us with time for just one more story this week, Eric. And longtime watchers of the 5 Minute Roundup will know that we have on numerous occasions talked about therapy pets on airplanes. And this was, a more interesting issue for us, admittedly, when we were flying around a lot more than we are these days. But it's been a recurring theme, and I came across a story that I just had to bring into the show this week, which concerns a Sudanese passenger plane that was forced to make an emergency landing after a cat entered the cockpit and attacked the pilot. Now, I should say up front, this was not a therapy pet. This wasn't even, from what I can make out, a cat that a passenger brought onto the plane. Apparently, the plane was out on the tarmac, and there were stairs rolled up to an open door, and a presumably feral cat kind of got into the plane somehow, made its way into the cockpit, attacked the pilot, who I assume is okay, and they made an emergency landing. Everything was all right. But just one more illustration, Eric, if any was needed, you got to be careful about animals on airplanes.
Man, I'm just imagining, the ransom demands of the cat, before they relinquish control of the cabin back to the pilots.
I can declaw these things, but you're going to have to pay up. Well, folks, that is all the time we've got this week. Thank you so much for joining us on the 5 Minute Roundup. If you like the show, you want to take a look at some episodes you didn't see in the past, you want to know about the new episodes when they come out, what you should do is go to the ChannelPro Network channel on YouTube and become a subscriber. Don't forget to click that little bell icon if you want to get notified when the new episodes go up. You want to read more about what's happening in the industry, get all sorts of great business growth advice from our wide set of friends and experts like Eric. go to channelpronetwork.com every day. We have got excellent new content for you going live on that site every day. To learn more about Erick and the work he does with his clients, please visit ericksimpson.com. That is ERICK Simpson.com. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to be back again next week with another episode of the 5-Minute Roundup for you. Until then, folks, please enjoy the rest of your week. Erick and I are enjoying the rest of your week already.
Already.